Thank you all for being here today. This is my book. It's the first and last. It's a story of my involvement with the restoration of, my participation in the restoration of 5 different historic buildings here in our community. The Laterno home, the Stone Barn, the Taylor Schoolhouse, the Dr. Small home, and most recently the Log Schoolhouse in Bourbonnais. I'll give you a little history on me personally. I was born in Kankakee County and lived here all my entire life. And my parents, my dad was from Larab area in Iroquois County, Mom from the Limestone area in Kankakee. My dad did not speak English until he was about 16 years of age when he came into town to live with his sister. Prior to that, he only spoke French. And I know a little French, just enough to cause problems, and so I won't go into that. But Dad and Mom were great people. They cherished their 2 boys, my brother and I, beyond belief, and they were wonderful parents. Mom was one of 4 girls in her family, and my dad had 4 sisters, and he had a brother that he never knew about. But Norma Meyer was researching my family many years ago and discovered that my father had a brother that had died at about 3 months of age, but then my dad wasn't born until 21 or 22 years later. And so his parents never talked about it, and he never knew about it. So he actually had a brother that he never knew about. When I got out of school, I went to work in a local business, and I met a man there that I would later come to admire. The man was an accountant at that business. I was just a regular employee. I was what they called a group leader at the time. I had 6 or 7 people working with me or working for me. But this gentleman was very pleasant. I got along with him fine. We worked in different parts of the plant, but occasionally we'd run into each other maybe once every 10 days to 2 weeks, and we'd stop and we'd have a nice little talk. And got to know this gentleman very well, and always admired him. Always thought he was a great man. Well, then I decided to go into a different avenue of employment. I became a police officer, and that's where I spent the rest of my working days in law enforcement. But one day, after moving to Bourbonnais, we had a insurance agent, a lady by the name of Ruth Inns. She operated Inns Insurance Company in Bourbonnais. And I had a meeting with her to talk about some insurance issues, and she mentioned to me that there was a group of people forming the Bourbonnais Grove Historical Society. Would I be interested in attending a meeting? Well, I always enjoyed history. I thought it was an exciting, fun thing to learn. And I agreed to meet with her, and then we went to where the meeting was to be held. And as I walked in that meeting, the man that I had met years ago was sitting at a table with a smile from ear to ear. He apparently knew I was coming, and I didn't know he was there. The man was Adrian Richard. And from that day on, I was kind of hooked. I've been involved now since the Bourbonnais Grove Historical Society formed as a result of the centennial celebration in Bourbonnais in 1975. And that year, Adrian Richard and others created the Bourbonnais Grove Historical Society. Then in 1976, with Ruth Inns, I joined the Historical Society as well. And from that point on, it's been one meeting after another over the last, I forget how many years. The following year, in 1977, 2 things interesting happened. Number one, I was elected to an office in the Bourbonnais Grove Historical Society. And I've held office in either Bourbonnais or Kankakee County since that point on. At times in both organizations, but never without one or the other being part of my life. And for the past 46 years, which is a state of Illinois record, I've held office in a historical society. The second thing that happened that year of significance was I met a good friend of mine, and I've maintained that friendship since then with Vic Johnson. Vic joined in 1977, and we hit it off, and we did a lot of crazy things together over the years. And Vic has been a good friend and a mentor all these many years. About the same time, I met another gentleman, a guy by the name of Jack Clacy, and I don't know if any of you know of him or not.
I've heard the name.
Heard the name, have you? Well, he'll be up here in a few minutes. But Jack, too, has been a mentor, and both gentlemen I have just admired over the years. Now, Vic is much older. He's about 10 years older than we are. But Jack and I formed the 75% Club a few years ago. That means we were both 75 years old. Well, that's been several years ago now. You want me to tell him how many, Jack? 8 years later.
8 years later.
Yeah, we're now both parts of the 83% Club. So that's kind of my background. Then I got involved with an issue in Bourbonnais called the Letourneau Home. And on June 20th, 1986, we moved the Letourneau Home from where it had been for many, many years to where it sits today. A local contractor by the name of Ray Odell was the moving company man that moved the Letourneau home. He hired another man to drive the moving truck so that Ray could walk ahead of the truck going down the street from where it was standing to where it was going to be located. And the man driving the truck was a man by the name of Jim Baker. And Jim was a fireman at the time out of Naperville, and he lived down here this area. Jim was the brother of the next Kankakee County Museum Executive Director, Connie Lacombe. Connie and Jim and their father, Grover, were part of the movement as well. And we moved the house without hitch, without a problem, from its former location to where it sits today. And then a contractor, Harlan Winhorn Builders, was contracted to rehab the house. At that time, I was working, and after I got off of work every night, I would run over to the house and I would do something, either clean up, put primer paint on stuff, move stuff from one point to the other. I kept busy doing that. One night, when I got over there, the two men working for Winhorn Builders at the time that were working on that project, Jim Danforth and David Bilodeau, they both told me that the place was haunted. The doors were opening and closing, and there was nobody there. And they would be standing there, and they would see a door open, and then it would close. Well, this started working on my brain a little bit too. So Jim and Dave left after their work shift, and then I usually stayed there and worked until it got dark, and then I'd go home. Well, this night, my wife Judy brought my dinner over, and she was looking for me, and she couldn't find me. She was looking all around. And I was working on the scaffolding outside up on the second floor, painting some trim around the window. And all at once I realized there was a face in that window. Well, it was Judy who brought my supper over, and I almost fell off that scaffolding. Crazy. Before that too, we had had a chimney along the left side of the house that went from the ground level all the way up past the second floor, past the peak. And we didn't know how we were going to get that thing down, so we got the brainstorm of putting a rope on it. So one of our volunteers, and I can't remember who it was, got up on a ladder and played cowboy, and he roped. About the third or fourth time he threw the rope up there, it went over the chimney. So a whole bunch of us got out in the yard and started pulling on that rope, and it wasn't budging. The chimney wasn't budging. But then we saw somebody pull up who was a volunteer, a guy by the name of Jim Walsh. Francis actually was his first name. Real nice guy, a big man, very strong. So we convinced him to come over there and pull on the rope with us, and he did. And pretty soon down came the chimney, and we all took off running because those bricks from the chimney, when they hit the ground, were like shrapnel. I mean, it just went all over the place. Luck would have it, nobody got hurt. So then because of this brilliant brainstorm we had, we decided to do the same thing with the front porch. The porch ran all the way across at that time. But that wasn't the way it had been in the 1883 atlases. It was a much smaller porch on the atlas drawing. But we tried the same procedure with the rope and run procedure that we used on the chimney, and we were successful again. It came thundering down with dust flying in all directions, but nobody got hurt. We restored the home, and it's been used now for many years as the Letourneau Museum, George R. Letourneau Museum. After that project, I had a lull in my experiences for a while until one day we got a call from Connie Lacombe asking if a bunch of us were available to meet up at the stone barn. There was an opportunity there to turn the stone barn into the French Heritage Museum, which it is today. Arsène Denoyer had passed away, and in his estate he had left funds to build a French Heritage Museum, and Connie was excited to get started on that if we were interested. A bunch of us showed up over there for a meeting. Many of you are here today. And it came to be, and the French Heritage Museum, through the help of a lot of volunteers, became reality. One of the interesting things that happened over there was one day I was inside working and Connie was outside doing some landscaping work, and the door come flying open and Connie come running in. There's a body out there. So I went out, and sure enough, here's two legs sticking out from under a bush. And I thought, well, I'm not going to grab that leg and see what it's attached to. So I called the police, and they come over there, and turns out that it was a homeless man who was sleeping under the bush. So that went pretty well. And then we had a couple other experiences over there. One was, there had been a restaurant in there that Emmett and Jan Sullivan had operated back in the 1970s. And after it was no longer used as a restaurant, this cooking equipment was all left in place, and there was a metal hood that they had used in the kitchen area that had to be custom made because it was really heavy material, and we could only get it off the ceiling down to the floor, but we could not get it out of there. It was just too heavy. And I had a friend of mine who was a commercial electrician, and I asked him if he knew of anybody that might be interested in that. He said he thought he did. And I asked him to send them over, and they did come over. Two men come over there, and they brought along with them a metal cutting device that sprayed showers and showers of sparks all over the place. And I don't know why we didn't burn the place down, but we didn't. But they took out two truckloads, two good-sized pickup truckloads just from that hood. All the connections it had on it and everything, and they had to cut it all up to get it out of there. And it was an interesting experience watching all that happen. And then afterward, the construction efforts inside. After that, then I thought my job was done, and I was going into retirement again, but then Connie mentioned there was a a couple of things over here at the museum that she would like to get some work done on. One was the Taylor Schoolhouse. The former executive director had stored thousands of books on shelves and just in boxes and on the floor and stacked all over the place in the back of the Taylor Schoolhouse. Over the years, these books had gotten wet, the rodents had gotten into them, the bugs were there. It was just a mess. Mold all over everything. There was mold as an inch thick on everything. So she wanted to get that all cleaned out. And so we spent several days, probably a couple of weeks at least, getting it just cleaned out and then sealed up, and they sprayed bleach on the inside to kill the mold and got rid of all of that. And then we created a living quarters in the back of the Taylor Schoolhouse after that. And then I thought I was done again, and then she mentioned that upstairs at the Dr. Small house had only been used as a storage unit for many, many years. And she convinced me then that we should do something up there. Well, we got up there and determined that the flooring was in terrible shape. They had glued carpet on top of the flooring that was there. And then they got the carpet up okay, but then we discovered that the next layer of flooring was all old tile, this asbestos tile. Your choices with that are to hire somebody to remove it, which is going to cost us just under $100,000 because they had to wear their suits and everything when they were fooling with the asbestos tile, or leave it in place and put a new floor over top of it. Well, I spent the next month or so on my knees up there putting this wood floor on. And then, of course, after that was on, then we had to stain it and then paint the walls and on and on and on. So I spent another couple months up there doing that. And after that, then came the log schoolhouse in Bourbonnais, which was pretty much a piece of cake. In my book, I only talk about efforts of other people and what they have done. But that's what my book is about, the adventures I've had during the years with the restoration efforts. And I thank you all for putting up with me.